Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 351, back from a week of vacation in spring training, and kind of a lot's happened. We've got a lot of Packer stuff we're going to go over. They made 4 additions, 6 subtractions, addition by subtraction maybe. Rashawn Gary is out, Javon Hargrave is in. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about the Bucs, who are doing absolutely the worst thing they could do, and that's middle it. They're going to be one step out of the play-in tournament, and they're not going to be a top 5, top 6 pick. Giannis is playing, hurt himself again, hyperextended his knee yesterday during a dunk in a win against the Pacers, which he didn't want to begin with. We'll discuss that. We're going to talk a little World Baseball Classic, too. I know I said when it started I was not invested in this at all. I kind of got invested. Mark DeRosa's foible in the Italy game and pool play was sort of interesting. We'll discuss that. The game against the Dominican last night ended on just a horrible strike 3 call, but good for the Americans, and now they await the Venezuela-Italy winner tonight. We'll talk some Brewers spring training. Not a ton to go over. Almost got a perfect game thrown against them yesterday. And of course, March Madness is a couple of days away. Badgers get a 5 seed. No doubt they're on the West Coast and taking on a hot mid-major. And I have a special guest, my favorite person in the world, my wife, because we're snowed in, is joining us on the podcast today. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for 351, not 350.
Yes, exactly right.
I don't know what that means, but I'm a little offended.
Okay, well, you'll find that that's the case here a lot. I feel like that's how we operate.
Well, that's just how we operate in our normal day-to-day.
That is true. All right, so episode is coming up. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. Hit time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
All right, welcome in Monday morning. Blizzard going on outside, I think, for a lot of the folks that listen or download the podcast wherever they are here today. We had the week off. I appreciate you giving me a little bit of time. My wife and I were down in Arizona spring training, our 3rd time down there. We're going to give you a little bit of a review of that. My first question, though, is how awful is tomorrow morning going to be?
It's going to be the worst of all time.
We have not worked since Friday morning.
I worry about you, my friend, because you slept till 9 this morning.
I know.
You've been sleeping till essentially 9 o'clock Central for a full week.
It's been bad.
And it's going
to be bad. Yeah, no, I know that. But luckily, we only have 2 days and then off right away again on Thursday and Friday for March Madness. So that'll be all right.
Who needs work?
That's all right. Well, we're back from Arizona. So this is our 3rd time. We went way back in the day when we couldn't afford to go in 2012. And then we went 2 years ago, and we had such a good time 2 years ago, we thought, let's try to make this, I don't know if it's going to be an annual thing, but maybe it will be. We couldn't go last year. Shout out to my buddy Pat, who I know is going to download this. And we were, for his 40th birthday, we were in New Orleans, so we couldn't quite make it last year. But we made it this year, so we did Costco again. I talked about this on a previous podcast. It's our 2nd full-on Costco vacation. We took our moms to New York, which was lovely.
It was very lovely. They had the time of their lives.
They did.
Especially Pam.
Yes.
Hi, Pam. Shout out to Mom.
She's going to be very excited about that. I'm going to get a text about that in 2 hours, I'm sure. But we did the whole thing on Costco for New York, and it went really well. I mean, everything that they said that they were going to do kind of played out, and so we did it again for spring trading. I think it worked out pretty well, other than, we talked about it on the podcast, other than when they charged me an extra $4,000. That was not the best.
You talked about that on the podcast.
Yeah, I did.
Are you an open book here, sir?
Yeah, too much.
Yeah.
Some would say too much so.
Well, the previous one, too, my bank wouldn't let our New York charge go through,
Yeah.
so I had to get a new card as well. So it hasn't been
the payment part
totally smooth,
yes,
but the back end has been lovely.
And I was hoping for the all beef hot dog on the airport arrival in New York. That did not happen.
No, we got an all beef at one of the games, though.
That's true. Yeah, we did do that. So I think it went okay. I mean, we stayed at a place called the Mountain Shadows Resort. Your thoughts on Mountain Shadows? I think it's the best place we've probably ever stayed at.
I mean, easily the nicest place.
I was trying to think of what would be the second. It's hard to even think.
Well, the New York place was very nice.
That was very nice, yeah.
Slightly under construction, but very nice.
Yeah.
Usually we just find someplace cheap to stay.
There was the place in Sioux Falls that I was very excited about because they had biscuits and gravy at the the breakfast.
This was like a Motel 6.
My God.
It was bad.
Yeah.
No, is that the one that had cereal?
Oh, with
Basically
whole
just-
milk.
yeah.
Or you could put gravy on it. That's how they do it in the South.
Yeah, apparently. Well, Dakotas are not in the South.
Well, whatever. The West.
Okay.
All right, you can't be correcting everything on the podcast. I say a lot of wrong things, and then the listener can say that's not right, and then we move on.
All right, that's fair. So our resort was in essentially Paradise Valley. So we were in between the Camelback Mountain and the Phoenix Mountain Reserve Park, which had Piestewa Peak. Did I say that right?
I think you did.
I think so, because in Spanish, P-I-E is P-A, which is your foot,
Ah,
by the way.
wow.
Just gonna drop
Fun facts everywhere.
knowledge bombs everywhere.
Okay.
But on either side of when we went out onto our patio
Yeah.
that overlooked the beautiful pool.
Which we used, which we never used.
No, we never used. We were able to see both peaks on either side of where we were staying. So it was very nice.
I think the nicest we've ever stayed.
Yeah, hands
I would go back.
Totally.
Yeah.
I would definitely go back to that one.
I got to read the Wall Street Journal every morning.
Every day.
They had free papers out every day. I think they were free, at least. We took them.
Oh.
I know more about the Strait of Hormuz now than just about anybody on the planet Earth. Because you could get the paper, you get a free coffee every morning. They had a really nice coffee bar, and we were able to sit on the patio and get some sun and spend, I guess, a half an hour every morning like that.
Yeah, it was a delight.
It was. So, really nice place and would go back. Mountain Shadows Resort. There were 3, I think, kind of golf course resorty places that had hotels and kind of condos on the other side, too, that were all in that same strip area. I am really sad that we did not get to see the wedding that was kind of happening on Friday. Yeah. So we were leaving on Saturday, and then there was something scheduled for the pool. They were shutting the pool down. They had like a platform on the pool. This seemed like an extravagant wedding that we think is, in the 6 figures?
At least they were shutting down most of the resort. So I think their ceremony was out on this lawn that they had Friday.
Yeah.
Because we made it to the hotel bar,
Yeah.
my guy, and they
Yes.
made some ruckus on their way back through the hotel. And we had to leave the next day. The pool was closed after 4, so I'm assuming they just had bought it out.
Yeah, I think the whole thing.
Yeah, that's expensive.
Yeah, I would say. But yeah, so we would go back to that place, I think, no doubt about that. And then let's talk about, do you want to talk about climbing or do you want to talk about ballparks?
It's your podcast, sir.
Let's talk about climbing. So we did the Piestewa Peak. We did a really easy, I think, on Monday, right? We did kind of
it
the
was
easiest.
a nature trail within the Mountain Reserve Park.
Pretty
which
simple.
Is a very nice place that's run by the city of Phoenix. Really well marked trails, everything really well kept, toilets everywhere. Very nice place. 8 minutes?
Yeah,
from our resort?
the one thing about the resort was we were so close. 10 minutes to basically, or 15 minutes to basically everything, except for Goodyear Park, which we'll talk about in a second. That was kind of a mess. But so we did a nice ramp up hike on Monday, which, I don't know, took an hour and a half or so. Not a huge amount of elevation or anything like that. And then we did Piestewa Peak on Tuesday.
Yes. I should have brought my journal.
You had the journal. And then that was a little more difficult. I think that took us a couple of hours. We were lucky to have cloud cover, which is not something we learned that happens a ton in that area. But we did that on Tuesday, and that was a nice hike, I thought.
It was really nice. We thought it was... the city had it marked as extremely difficult, like 2 diamonds.
Scared
on
me
it.
a little bit before we went on it.
I would say, compared to most of the hikes that we've done, probably moderate to hard. I wouldn't say there was any part of it that was death-defying.
Yeah.
Or any place where I thought we would turn back.
Which we'll get to in a second.
Yes. But very nice payoff at the top. And a nice hike. I would do that one again. We got really lucky, though, with the weather. It was 70s.
Yeah, right.
And overcast until we got to the last quarter mile on the way down.
Yeah.
So we got really lucky.
And then Wednesday, we decided to take it easy because, you got to kind of get in hiking shape a little bit. And then Thursday, we did Camelback. So credit to us. We got up. There's very little parking at Camelback if you've never done the Camelback mountain hike. So we had to get up very early on vacation at 4:30 in the morning, and we did it. We got up early, we got the parking spot, we got breakfast, we did everything that we kind of set out to do, which if you've ever tried to do that on vacation, you know can be a little touch and go. We got the spot, we ate our breakfast sandwich from a gas station, and then we started our hike up at 6? 6:15?
6:15.
And the
sun
sun
was starting to come out.
just
so.
a little bit, yeah. So this is a longer hike. It was what? 2.5 around and back?
I think the total was maybe almost 3 out and back. Or up and back?
Up and back.
and down?
So it is a very steep incline, and we got to, I would say, at about the 1 mile mark. So they had little markers, which I eventually looked up how many there were. Like every, I think, 10th of a mile, they had a number that said how far you were on the trail. And we got to the platform that had kind of a, like we would call a fake summit. Mm-hmm. And then I looked out, and it is, I mean, intimidating.
Very.
Straight shot up for about 0.3 of a mile, and it's basically climbing a mountain. I mean, it's like there are some spots where you're just climbing a mountain, it feels like.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant rock scramble. I would say mostly well marked. Well, you're trying not to fall off the mountain face.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Sometimes it was hard to see where the next spot would be, but by the time we got to there were a few people coming down.
One
So
with a
that
baby
was-
on his back.
One with the baby. That was one of the hardest spots.
I know, yeah.
Because there was a big shelf to go up, and I think I needed to put my right foot by my ear.
Yeah.
In order to get up that ledge, and this dude's just like la la la. I'm gonna go down with this, probably
literally a
18-pound baby.
Yeah.
On his back and
Said,
one of
"Oh,
those packs.
excuse me, guys." So as we were maybe thinking about, are we going to do the rest of this? Because it did get a little sketchy. This guy comes down with a child on his back. And I think that kind of, I don't know if it inspired us, but we thought, okay, if this guy's doing this on the way down, we've got to be able to do this.
I feel like we see that on every hike we're on, though. You see some struggles, and then you see some 50-year-old with no shirt on and a 16-ounce water bottle just...
It's like Air Monarchs on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just... Or, the family that we saw on the way out that had flip-flops on. I wonder
God,
if they
ever
made it.
made it. Probably not.
They all had flip-flops on.
One bottle of water and flip-flops.
How? I don't know. Do you think the internet exists, man? Like,
Google it.
Read it.
Why don't you Google it?
And plan accordingly. But yeah, that was the hardest hike we've ever done.
So we got to a point where there was a straight kind of path, but if you looked on either side, which I did briefly, it's a straight shot down.
Oh yeah, certain death.
Yeah, I mean, so it was and it was getting, the higher you get, if you've ever done one of these mountains, the windier it gets, the higher you get up. So the wind is kind of whipping, and you're walking straight, and there's enough space. Like, if you're in your right mind and you just keep your head down, you're thinking, okay, we should be fine with this, but you look to your left, you look to your right, you feel the wind rushing. Like, if I get off balance, it is a little scary.
How many times, I think we talked about this, how many times did we want to quit?
At least, there were 2 times, I think right before that straight, and then there was the one right before the summit where I asked the guy coming down, which is always interesting when you're hiking a mountain, because people try to strike a balance between letting you know that there are tough parts, but also encouraging you to want to keep going. So you're always kind of half selling on the way down. Like, you don't want people to do something that's going to put them in danger, but you also want them to do this thing that they want to do. So he came down and I said, "How close are we?" And he said, "There's a little bit of a rock scramble, but you should be okay, but you're close." And I thought, okay. And it was a little bit of a rock scramble.
Yeah, I would qualify that as a, quote, little bit of rock scramble. There was one spot where I think we ended up bypassing what was another very tall rock face. I have short legs. Like, trying to get up these things is more challenging. Plus, I was going really slow because I'm going to make sure my feet are fine. I am more out of shape than you are. So I went pretty slow. But I had to go around this cliff face, and it was super windy. I was almost losing my hat. And that was the point where I had to give myself an audible pep talk.
I didn't hear your pep talk.
No,
I was a
I
little
was
ahead
like,
of you.
all right, we're almost there. You just take the hat off. We just got to go. And then it was 2 steps around, and you were right there. And that was the one spot where I was like, I don't know. But at that point, going
so
backwards
close.
was going to be even worse.
I think that's what I thought too. Turning around is going to be just as hard as finishing this.
Yeah, so we made it. We did
We
it.
did, yeah. So we got to the
High
top.
five, bud.
It was beautiful. And then I became picture guy, which happens to me.
Always.
As soon as we get to the top or get to a recess or something, there's always a spot where we're having a snack and then people want to take... I mean, people want their pictures and they don't want to take selfies. So I don't know what it is about me. They will always say, hey, can you do this? And then I had to walk with them to like the edge of the mountain.
Like the one girl's like, I don't like this spot. So we're going to go to this other spot. Do you mind coming over here to the other side of the summit?
To the edge of the mountain. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to keep my space here. But we enjoyed our time up there, and I'm glad we did it.
Guess who didn't take a photo?
Us.
At the top of the
Yeah, we did not. I was too busy taking other people's pictures.
We have no photographic evidence of us being on top
I did take the picture, at least, of the view.
Okay.
But we never got a picture of us at the top of it. But then the way down, I thought was okay. I took a tumble on the way down. I fell over on that one part. But I thought it was fine on the way down. Typically it is, and you kind of know what to expect. I think that's another thing. If we did it again and you kind of know what you're getting into, I think it is a lot easier. The fact that we didn't know how far we were, I don't think we were expecting that part of it.
No, it was...
to be that bad.
Well, because we had done the other one earlier that week, that was double diamond, super hard. And
this, I would say, was a double diamond.
This one was very strenuous. I would believe everything on All Trails that this one is very strenuous, but it's still doable.
Yeah.
And I compare it to when we made it to the fall summit at Angel's Landing, where you're looking up on the skinny thing with this... not rope, but chain link that you've got to hold on to go up to this space that like is 6 inches wide, and you've got ups and downs like that. No, thank you.
Yeah.
But this one is totally doable. You do need to use your hands. Hands got chewed up, but if you're careful with your footholds and you know what you're getting into, it's doable for people that are not petrified by heights.
Yeah.
And have decent cardio, like if you could go and run a mile, you should be able to.
Well, an Angel's Landing had the sign before you got to that part that had like a count of people that had died.
7 people have died in the last 4 years. Like, I don't want to be.
I don't want to die on vacation.
I don't want to be number 8.
Yeah, so I don't know if that happens at Camelback. I didn't want to know, but we got that done and made our way back down. And then we took the day off on. Or did we do the Papago?
Yeah, we went to Papago.
We did some serious white collar.
Yeah, that
hiking.
was nothing. That was a nothing burger.
Yeah.
But we did see the amphitheater that was built by the CCC.
CCC,
you remember this? Yeah, in
Civil
the 30s.
Engineer, whatever, corporation.
Yeah, during the New Deal.
Yes, the New Deal.
The New Deal?
We talk about that often on the podcast.
Do you actually talk about...
Well, probably it's been brought up once in a while, yeah.
Well, maybe on your Red Rocks episode.
Yeah.
You talked about how
this is the thing. It looked like a smaller, abandoned version of Red Rocks. It had a kind of, I don't know if you want to say an eerie quality to it, but it obviously had not been kept up. But when you look around, I think you said this looks kind of like Red Rocks. Well, yeah, everything looked the same, except it was smaller and the stage was kind of beat up.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that it almost looked like, and I'd have to see the timeline, it almost is like Red Rocks would almost base itself off of something like that on a much grander scale.
I think they were built around the same time.
Yeah. But anyway, that was interesting, but that was very easy. Well marked. There was nothing to that one. Basically, just short of being paved.
We carried a bottle of water.
Yeah,
on that
right.
One
that was
instead
one
of
that was
backpack.
easy. Yeah.
So we were fine on that one.
But we saw some cool stuff. But yeah, Camelback, I would put that. I still think Bear Butte, was that in Dakota?
Yes.
I still think that was one of the hardest that we've done.
Just outside of Spearfish.
Yeah. I would put Camelback ahead of that, but I would stand by. Zion had so many switchbacks, but they were easy. I mean, they were well defined. It was just exerting. In terms of like danger, this one feels about where Bear Butte, I think was maintained to an extent, but there was a lot of.
I feel like that one suffers under our initial hiking efforts.
Yeah, I guess.
That was a lot more than we thought because we had literally only hiked one other day.
Yeah.
And that was in the Badlands, which is, I guess the hike should have been relatively simple.
But we got lost.
If you didn't carry a human being.
Yeah, that was that too. Yeah, that was one of our first hiking experiences.
That was the first hike we've ever done, and we found someone who broke her leg.
Fractured her ankle.
Yeah.
And me and her husband carried her to a point where we could get other people to help us.
Well, I ran ahead and I was like, football dudes, come with me. And they're like,
there were
what?
Some guys in their 20s.
And they just farmer carried her the last half a mile.
But Bear Butte was tough in that there were some moments there too where you were at an edge or a turn and it kind of was like, oh, if you take the wrong step here. That was also our run-in with the kindly Native American gentleman who
you got a stick.
who was at the visitor center of Bear Butte. We were getting set to go on that hike, and we just asked him, is there anything we need to know about this? We feel like we're kind of comfortable doing something to this level. And he said, no, you should be all right. And then as we're on our way out, he said, oh, by the way, do you have a stick? And we both said, no. And he said, he took a pause and said, no, you should be fine. And we both were kind of like,
Sir,
wait a minute.
pardon.
I'm going to have to go ahead and ask why you would ask if we need a stick. He said, oh, for the rattlesnakes, in case they come close to you, you pound the ground and it'll scare the rattlesnakes off. But you should be fine. Okay.
We did not find any rattlesnakes.
We heard
on that
them.
one. We heard some of them. I would say Devil's Tower had more rattlesnakes.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so I think that was one of the harder ones that we've ever done. But that, I would put Camelback ahead of that, especially that last 0.3 of a mile. So we went to a bunch of ballparks. Maryvale is Maryvale.
Yeah.
It's just blah. I mean, they put a lot of money into it, but it is a very blah.
They painted it a very nice brown.
They did, yeah. It was like if you were to flip a house really poorly, and you were just, let's get a couple new cabinets and let's throw some paint on here and make it look sort of nice with some finishings, even though the bones of it are still kind of crappy. Yeah. But it was fun. I mean, it's fun to go and to see a ton of Brewer fans. So we did that on Monday, and then did we do Talking Stick on Tuesday? That was the overcast day. So we did Puesta, whatever, Peak, and then we went to Talking Stick, which is the Rockies.
It's Salt River Fields at Talking Stick, which was basically, 15 minutes north of where we stayed.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, very nice.
We had a great time. I mean,
very
I don't know.
Large.
Yeah, and I don't know if we had as good of a time on, because we went back on Friday.
Yes.
But it was a lot hotter.
Yeah, there's not a lot of shade at that one. There's
No.
some shade in Maryvale. There's some shade in some of the other places that we've been in the past, but no shade.
No shade. And if you've never done spring training, we just did, I think, only once in the last 2 trips where we've actually bought seats. So you can buy lawn tickets at any park, and literally it is what it says it is. The outfield is just lawn. You can put a blanket down. We have not done that except for maybe the first time way back where we bought a blanket that time. So people do that. I would like to get some of those mini seats we saw people had.
Those lean back jobs.
I don't know how you pack that in a suitcase to make it fit and take it back.
We'd have to check a bag.
Yeah, all right, so that's not going to happen. But I mean, in theory, it's a nice way to take it in from the lawn. And then we just walk. I mean, we kind of sit for an inning, and then you can take a lap, and it's just such a casual atmosphere. Like we talked about when we left at the end of the week, if you asked me to tell you what happened in those games, I don't know that I'd be able to tell you. I know the one Brewer game we saw at Goodyear, they lost 1-0 because it was just a bad offensive game. But I thought Talking Stick was one of my favorite places we've been to. I regretfully have to say that Sloan Park, the Cubs facility, is awesome.
It's great.
I hate that that it had to be that way.
Architecturally, a lot of nods to Wrigley, but not in like a gross way, but in a kitschy way.
Yeah.
It had that vibe, but obviously the ceiling wasn't falling apart, so that's always a plus. Also unfortunate is that's where we had the best food.
Great food and beer.
Yeah.
They had the local breweries. They had a lot of local stuff, which you try to do when you're at these places. Like, I don't want to crush a 24-ounce Coors Light or whatever the hell. I mean, I thought about it at Goodyear. Ugh. You knew that was going to be that was Gut Rot City. Yeah. But they had the Prickly Pear, whatever brewing company that was. That was a great beer.
It was Grand Canyon Brewing.
Yeah.
It was a Prickly Pear wheat because they also had a Prickly Pear IPA.
Right.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
And a bison burger.
Was awesome.
Which was delicious.
Pretzel dog.
Pretzel dog was at Talking Stick.
Oh, was it at Talking Stick?
Yeah.
That was good too. Is that where I had the Is that where I had the ranch dressing that was 85 degrees?
So at Salt River Fields, where they have the condiment cart, they have your typical fare.
Yeah.
And then they also had Ken's Ranch,
which is the best.
Basically on tap.
Yeah.
But also when we were there and forced ourselves to use the ranch, it was 92 degrees.
And it was sitting in there.
And it was just in the sun.
As soon as I had I dipped the hot dog in. You always want your ranch to be boiling hot. So that wasn't the best. But I felt like we had to take advantage of. You never see Ken's Ranch on tap.
You don't.
Probably for that reason.
Well, while we're on the subject, at the Cubs Park, Sloan Park, they had all of the fixings for Chicago Doll out on those carts too. So it was like the green peppers, tomatoes,
everything,
the celery salt,
pickles,
all of the things out there. Which gross because it's again 90 degrees outside.
Right.
But they just did a nice job.
Everything was nice.
Super annoying.
Yep. One of the newer parks, too.
Yeah, even their sunscreen smelled the best
Yep.
out of all of the
And they
free
had those stations
sunscreens.
everywhere, water everywhere. I mean, you really couldn't go wrong. So that was unfortunate that was awesome. And then we had to hear that goddamn Go Cubs Go song. It looked like they were going to lose. They won in walk-off fashion. They hit that song the second they got that winning run across. That was awful. But it was a great park. Goodyear Park, we drove out to on Thursday. So it's probably fair to point out we had hiked Camelback. We were exhausted.
It was a long day on Thursday.
Long day. So it was night game. We had never been to a night spring training game. Most of those games all start at 1.
Yeah.
And whether you do that or even if you go to the Grapefruit League in Florida, I think they were 10 a.m. where we were, but that's 1 o'clock there.
Yep.
So it's kind of rare, and we thought, oh, cool, we'll see a night baseball game, spring training game. So we went to Goodyear Park in Goodyear, Arizona, which is, I don't know.
It's a suburb of Phoenix.
But it's just nothing from what we saw.
Well, from where we were
Yeah.
by the airport,
Right.
which was basically Amazon warehouse zone.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are 80,000 people that live in Goodyear.
I didn't
don't
see
know
one of them.
where any of them were.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it also took us an hour and a half to get there through traffic.
So one thing we did not anticipate, I guess, is that it's one of the further parks from where we were. So my buddy who works at our building, Otto, had told me he had been there and it was, quote, a nice drive to get out there. But he was
False.
probably going in the afternoon.
Yeah.
We drove in rush hour and we had to take, what was it, I-10 toward L.A.?
Yeah.
6 lanes of traffic. And as soon as we got there, it was like a disaster
I will
movie.
say it was still, we never stopped cold.
I guess.
There was always forward momentum, but it did take the better part of a half an hour to go 5 miles.
And the sun is just into
just
your eye.
beating
Even
down on you.
Sunglasses John with his
Yeah.
prescription shades. It
Yeah.
was still very obtrusive to what we were doing.
Yeah. And then the park was just a nothing burger, man.
Nothing, yeah.
Just not,
Did we even stay the whole time? I don't think we did.
no.
I think we checked out an inning early.
Yeah.
We had had enough. So it wasn't the best. It was not the best park we have been to. And now I feel like we've been to almost all of them.
I think we've been to all of them now.
Yeah, I think Sloan might be the best. I had the best time at Talking Stick
I
at
just
Salt River on
I
Tuesday.
don't remember Camelback Ranch
Yeah.
out in Surprise. We did that our very first year because we were staying on that side of town.
Right.
Because we were closer to Maryvale. So we went to that one, which is where the Dodgers Sox?
White Sox, yeah. Dodgers White Sox.
I remember that one being really nice. That was our first glimpse of Scooter Jeanette.
Yeah, way back in the day.
If you want to
Who doesn't
timeline
even
that.
play anymore.
No. So I recall that one being nice.
Yeah.
Also, because Maryvale we didn't even think was very nice back then either.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Salt River Fields was good. I remember enjoying Tempe
Tempe
last
was
time,
good. Yeah.
which is a Diamond Angels
yeah.
place. I remember liking that place, but
Yeah, I'd put Sloan up there as probably one of the best.
Yeah, it sucks.
Unfortunately. And Goodyear is the Guardians-Reds collaboration. We did not have the Skyline chili.
no.
The worst
We
chili.
had that on-
God's worst invention of all time.
We had that one on the ground in Cincinnati, and I had a couple of patients from Cincinnati at the time like, oh, you got to do it on the spaghetti noodles.
I
It's
guess.
like, what is this? And it's sweet, and it was like...
I was going to say,
It
have you
should have
ever...
been good. It was super cold that day.
Right.
You got pooped on by a bird.
I did.
Like, it's not.
What a
not
day
for
that
me.
was. I forgot about the poop,
We got
yeah.
on TV. That was a day.
Yeah, I was busted for
You
being... we were in a ratings period, and I wasn't supposed to be on vacation, and then that was like the only thing that could
Ben
screw
from the
us.
point. Hey, I thought you were sick.
The only thing that could screw us is if we end up on TV. Third inning, my phone. Oh boy. Yeah, Skyline is the word. I don't know what I guess if you grew up with it, it is what it is. But yeah, sweet chili on spaghetti noodles. No, thank you. With like a cinnamon quality to it, just awful.
Not good.
So yeah, that was not the best park. So those were the parks we went to this time around. Now, food-wise, I thought we kind of did well, other than, I don't know what we need to mention, I don't know that it even matters. Our brunch on whatever day that
Yeah,
was
it
at
wasn't
JoJo's
good.
was
Yeah.
really bad. And you ordered eggs over medium, the worst effort at eggs over medium we've ever seen.
I'm not even sure they cooked it, to be honest.
It was like they went the opposite way.
Yeah, it was.
I had cold potatoes. It was bad. But we went back to a spot that we had been to a few times. I forget the name of it, but
Blanco Cocina, maybe. It was like 5 minutes
yeah.
from where we were
Scottsdale
staying.
has a lot of great food.
Well, yeah, they have a lot of
A
people.
lot
to
of
feed.
money. Yeah, and a lot of money in Scottsdale.
Yes.
So we did have a couple of nice spots where we got tacos. We went to one place twice. We went to, I forget the other bar we went to. They had really good tacos. I thought actually that the tacos at the one place we went to were better than the tacos at
Yeah,
Cocina.
that one. What was it called? I should have brought my stupid germ. Do you want me to go get it? No, I'm not gonna.
All right.
No, I'm not going to.
But they were good. We did do one meal at the place, which maybe we would, if we went back to Mountain Shadows and stayed there again, we'd eat a dinner there because we had breakfast there on Friday
it was
morning.
delightful.
It was awesome. It was way better than the place we drove to.
Yeah, we had it at the bar. It was nice.
We also had dinner with Jacob Mizarowski in a way.
At the Cocina. He was across the way. We could see his eye line.
Yes.
And he's very tall.
Very tall. And I did make eye contact with him a few
You
times.
did?
Yeah. I couldn't stop staring in that direction. And I'm the only dope there with a Brewer hat, so he's probably thinking, oh my God, please don't interrupt. Because he looked like he was his grandma and grandpa, it looked like.
I thought we determined that those were his parents.
I don't think
No.
so.
No,
No.
they were his grandparents.
Yeah, but so we had dinner with Jacob Mizarowski. That was
We
nice.
did.
We didn't talk about my squirrel friend. I made a squirrel friend.
Oh, that was
at the top of Piestewa Peak, I think it was. Yeah. Came right up to me.
She was real cute.
Yep.
She knew what she was doing.
Yep.
She got a macadamia nut.
She did. An almond and a cashew.
Yeah.
I opened up a whole planter's bag of nuts for her.
I feel like she was almost going to get onto my lap.
Correct. Yes. She was,
I was
not afraid.
No, I didn't want to get scratched up by a mountain
But
squirrel.
she was about 10 feet behind us.
Yep.
And could see us
Saw her
eating.
coming.
All of a sudden, I hear this little guy behind me. Yeah. Oh, hello. Would you like a snack?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, it was a really good trip. I thought the food was good, too. And it was enjoyable. I don't know if we do it every year or not, but it was good.
It was good.
I think we hit everything.
Oh, our hamburger at One Handsome Bastard Distillery.
Oh, that was... And the drinks were awesome. That was the best food we had.
Yes, I think that was my favorite. We had that at lunch on Thursday. We did 4 million things.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff. Yeah, if you're ever in that area, One Handsome Bastard Distillery, they do their own... They do 2 vodkas, one potato-based, one corn-based.
Yep.
They do their own homemade infused gins, which were great.
Yeah.
And we both had 2 of their cocktails that were, I thought, outstanding.
Yeah.
And
Mango juice, underrated.
Yes. And what did I have? Blackberry lemon combo with gin.
Yeah.
Really good. And then their burger was elite.
Yeah, it was really good.
Cottage fries, which you never see.
Yep.
So that would be a place. I'm surprised we didn't go back, honestly. But
We did. Well, then we did.
we ran out of time.
Yeah.
I got to go to the hotel bar.
We still made it, bud.
I'm a big hotel bar
Thursday
guy.
was such a big day.
It was. There's a lot going on. Yeah, One Handsome Bastard. That was the best food we had. And it feels like they're going to be there for a while. I feel like the woman that was the bartender that day was either the owner or the manager of it.
Yeah. Trish was her name.
She was great.
She was delightful.
Yeah.
They were running on a 3-man crew in the middle of the day.
And they had outdoor seating and a huge space indoor.
Yeah.
They had games. It was kind of like if you went to Three Sheeps or whatever. I mean, they had board games and cribbage you could play. Do you want to talk about your cribbage hand at all quick before we're done here?
my cribbage hand when we
Yeah.
played cribbage at the hotel bar.
Yeah, it
and
was
we
bad.
played 2 games and I won them both.
Yeah.
And then I had a 20-point hand, which I've never had a 20-point hand before, guys.
Was that-
20-point hand? That was before my crib.
Was that the second game where you won by literally a peg?
Yes. I was down like 40 points. And that was at the tail end.
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
You brought it up,
I
dude.
know.
So yeah, that was the biggest hand I've ever gotten, and I have photographic evidence that when
No picture of us at the top of Camelback, but
but the win.
the cribbage win at the hotel bar.
But I think we were tied. Was it a count that I won on? We were at the last peg on both.
Okay. Yes. The last peg at the end.
Yes, and was it still the count that I got?
Yes, I had to win it on the count. I lost it on the count.
Yeah.
I had 2 spots I had to get. I had to get 2 on the count.
Yeah, you did, and you didn't, and I won.
All right, before we get you out of here, because you don't want to talk about Packer free agent moves?
I really don't.
Okay. Let's talk about Quinn Priester quick. By the way, people should know, just in case, we should have led with this probably. Maybe I'll cut this and put it back in the front. I won't. You have a radio background.
I do. This is how we met right here.
This is not unusual for you.
No, it's not.
You are a physical therapist, which is why I'm going to get your opinion on this, but you lived 2 separate professional lives.
Yeah, I'm in my second life.
Yes.
Which is
It's a
not
much
on
more
the
profitable life.
very, very much so. You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, right.
But this is how we met, right here.
Yeah.
You and me.
So
we didn't share a microphone then, though.
No, we had 2 microphones, which
So-
was good. But we both applied for the same job in the summer of 2006. So we both applied at WHBL for a news person job, and you got it.
Well, I have a lady voice. That's pretty much
You have a
it.
good radio voice. And they told me when I interviewed, basically the second I sat down, that I wasn't going to get the job, that they were kind of filling out the 8 interviews. And I didn't know that you were going to get the job.
Well, we
wasn't
didn't
aware
know
of
each
who
other.
you were.
No.
But Patrick told me, listen, you're a local kid. They knew I was from Sheboygan. Like, we want to have you in for the interview, but this is probably not something you don't have the experience of, the rest, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So it was fine. And that actually relaxed me because, you're kind of nervous for an interview. But when they basically tell you you're just filling out a quota, I was like, okay. And ended up having a good rapport with them, and they hired me part-time.
Yeah, that was my third job out of school, second radio news job. So I had a year of radio news under my belt at that point from Oshkosh, WSH. And then I spent that summer before I joined HBL in the Northwoods at Newswatch 12, WJFW. I worked behind the scenes, and it was one of the worst jobs I've ever had. I'm not a TV person. I always thought I was, but I know.
But you had the background. You had a little more background than I did.
Yeah, I had a year's worth of experience.
Yeah, and then you also
a lady
worked,
voice.
And you worked at the second best radio station, campus radio station
No,
the state of Wisconsin.
I think we have more awards.
Just because we were too lazy to submit for awards doesn't mean you...
So that means we're probably better?
Yeah. So we did. We called games together at HBL. We were kind of forced into an ill-fitting afternoon local politics show for people that were in their early 20s.
You were. I came in, tried to save you with some news.
Well, we bridged the gap then until Eldon came in. It was a disaster. I thought we were fine, but the whole idea of two 24-year-olds trying to host a local politics show was a mess.
It wasn't good because I didn't care.
Yeah, neither did I. So you have a radio background.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Quinn Priester.
Quinn Priester.
Had a wrist injury at the end of last year that they've been talking about now this week. I guess it bothered him at the end of last year. They didn't do anything with it sounds like. And he came back, and as he's ramping up in spring training, it has become an issue again. And they sidelined him then for a while, and he went to see a specialist. So they are saying this is per Pat Murphy. Did you see what he said, by the way, yesterday as they almost got their perfect game thrown against them?
No.
They interviewed him at the end of the game, and they said, tough game. Almost had a perfect game thrown against you. He said, well, it's never good to peak too early. I thought that was just a really good... Murph's the best. So they asked Pat Murphy. They sent Quinn Priester to see a vascular specialist in Dallas. And per Pat Murphy, it is a nerve issue in the TOS, thoracic outlet syndrome family.
Sure.
So here is just... You don't have to go too terribly deep into detail here. What are we looking at with Quinn Priester? Because
do I need to give my credentials first?
No, I think you are. Well, go ahead. You're a doctor.
I'm a doctor of physical therapy.
Yes.
I'm also an orthopedic clinical specialist. I had to take a second exam, and some of my special interests are mostly foot and ankle, but also I like working with athletes, mostly young athletes from high school and middle school. And I've had a few higher level baseball players over the last 2 years that I've learned a lot. Hopefully, I helped them the way that they needed to.
Yeah.
I don't know. I learned a lot, so I like to think that I have a small subset of information that can be useful here.
So what are we looking at?
So I'm not sure how it relates to his wrist. It could, because your nervous system is continuous. But thoracic outlet is an area that's in the front part of your shoulder chest, kind of between your armpit and your collarbone. Mm-hmm. And through there run every nerve that supplies your arm and hand and makes all of the muscles down there function, but also most of the vasculature, which are your blood vessels, also cut through that area and supply your arm with blood and take out blood and all of those things that happen with your blood vessel vascular system. Mm-hmm. So thoracic outlet, when that's a syndrome, quote unquote, it can be two different things. One, it can be vascular. So something in that area might be cutting off the blood flow to his arm and making that tingle. Or making it feel weak, right? If you ever put a blood pressure cuff on and you try to do a bunch of hand squeezes while you're giving blood and then your hand just can't do it anymore, that could be a vascular issue where you don't have the oxygen or the energy from your blood in order to make your muscles go, even if your brain is telling it to. The other option on thoracic outlet is when it's a nervous system problem. So our nerves go through there as well. So nerves loves movement, space, and blood flow. And if we take away one or more of those things, then it can produce tingling and weakness as well. So teasing that out would be why he went to a vascular specialist. I'm guessing the ATs and the PTs that the Brewers have on their payroll, we're not quite sure which one it was. We don't have really good tests for those things, so making sure that it wasn't vascular. My guess is that he had a weird pattern of where that numbness was in his hand. It doesn't say on that tweet from McCalvey whether it's his throwing arm. I'm guessing it is his throwing arm.
Yeah.
So because that spot is at the front of the shoulder, when you cock back to throw, it puts a lot of stretch into that area. But if you have some stiffness in your shoulder, which could lead to wrist or elbow issues down the line as well, there's a lot more shifting of the shoulder that moves into the front space as well. So you could have some lack of space in the front quadrant of your shoulder because of where his arm is in stretching, or because he has less room in the back of the shoulder, kind of driving his mechanics more forward.
Got it.
So most of the time it is a thoracic spine rib cage issue. My guess is he's working on those things. Every pitcher that pitches is working on their rotation, especially in both directions. But it could be an underlying shoulder problem that was leading to some of his wrist issues, or what I can assume could be some elbow stuff that contributed to his wrist too. So it's not vascular, so that's good. So it's more neurogenic or nervous system related. So a lot of movement stuff. It could be just some weird soft tissue things that he has. Even something as silly as like some mild stress. I don't know. Is he having a kid? Does he have some other things in his life that are weird?
Sure.
Who knows? Any of those things can kind of light up your system and make things be weird, especially when your nervous system is involved. So they'll go back to the drawing board, go back to the things that they know what to do, because they treat these people more than I do, and he should be okay.
Yeah.
Especially since his vascular system is cleared from that.
Well, kind of a big deal. 15-game winner last year. I mean, they need him.
I know, but we've got some ramp-up time.
Yeah.
If he doesn't play in April, he doesn't play in April. It's not that big of a deal. But a lot of nervous system calming, maybe vagus nerve stuff for those nerds out there. But it's a slow-moving needle, and it's a little bit of a wildly crazy one. So it's just taking it day by day, as much as nobody likes to hear that stupid thing. But it's not a tissue issue. This is more of a nervous system issue, and those can be a little bit more delicate. You can't force those like you can a soft tissue. So
They don't think it's surgery related. That's what I think they did update that.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Rarely does a thoracic outlet require a surgery that would be advantageous for a pitcher, because you would need to clear some space.
Yeah.
Nervous system wants movement, space, or blood flow. You need to clear some space, and a lot of times that's a pec muscle, and well, he kind of needs that.
Yeah.
So I know what I would do, but I'm not.
You're not in there yet? Not yet.
I'm not his physical therapist, and I don't work with elite athletes on the reg. So I have the skills to mostly manage those things. So I would assume that their training staff and their therapy staff has the skills to continue to move them forward. So
Doesn't sound like a disaster.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just as long as his hand doesn't fall asleep, should be okay.
Okay. Well, like I told you, 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's not 10 minutes. Well, you asked me the questions that make me talk a lot.
No, that's fine.
So let's talk about PT nerdy stuff, and then I can talk for
I thought it was good.
all day
Yeah.
about it, because
You know what you're doing.
I like to
But
think
before we clicked record, I told you what?
all 10 minutes, whenever we're done. Just like this podcast is only an hour, right?
Now, so the people who listen to this podcast will know, and it's been pointed out to me by several different people, I frequently at the beginning of podcasts, I guess, say, I don't have a lot of time today. I've got other stuff to do. We need to motor through this.
4 hours
And
later.
then it ends up being the longest podcast we ever did. So subconsciously, I take that as some kind of weird challenge I issue myself. So this would fit right in line with that.
Okay.
All right. That's a no Packer conversation. You don't want to talk about
No, I'm good.
Javon Hargrave or...
Even in Arizona, we didn't see any. We only saw Packer sweatshirts, no
That's
jerseys.
it. Yeah, it was kind of surprising.
We didn't even find that good of jerseys this year.
Yeah, it was bad. We did not. The mystery, the fun random jersey game was not a good one.
Not really.
Now, I wore my Timu Nolan Ryan. That was a hit.
That was a hit.
Everywhere we went.
Yeah, especially at the Cubs joint. You had like 6 people like
Fun fact, I don't know if, I think my friends probably know this, but I, for whatever reason, became obsessed with Nolan Ryan as a kid. I've got a
You
million
and
Nolan Ryan
everyone
baseball
else.
cards. So on Timu, I ordered the old school Astros. Now, it's not, if you actually looked at the old
It's
Astros
not
jersey.
precise.
No,
The text
it's
is a
Timu.
little off,
It's
yeah.
yeah, right. So they can't do it that way. But it's so close, and it's got the right, and the stitching's actually kind of nice on it. So I wore that if we didn't go to a Brewer game, kind of a neutral jersey. Everybody loved that jersey.
Yeah, it's that and Drogba, man. You got the major.
Conversation starting jerseys.
You
I think
really
I
do.
probably had the best random jersey with that one.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, there was not a lot of fun random jersey games. That's sad.
No.
All right. So are you going to go shovel or what do you want to do?
What?
We'll wait a few hours.
I don't think it's done snowing yet.
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
There's probably a foot of snow out there. Our neighbor already went through,
Ugh.
and he did not.
Didn't help
He
us
did
out.
not help us out
Yeah.
at all.
Okay.
I think they all know that we're home.
I know. Maybe they would have been interested to see if they would have helped us had they thought we were still gone.
I don't know, but he did do the whole driveway for our 90-year-old neighbors,
Which was very nice,
which is good.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're home. They might not be home.
They might.
wonder
I
if
think
they're
they
in-
do snowbird
I
somewhere.
think they're in Missouri. They have a place by the Ozarks.
That's right, yeah.
Diane tells me.
Okay. Diane and Jerry. I helped Jerry shovel last year when there was a bunch of snow.
Well, Jerry is like 94
I
years
was like,
old.
Jerry, you can't. What are you doing?
He's in great shape.
He is, but you got to be a little careful.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, our neighbors must not be home
Yeah.
because he did their driveway too, which I was like, come on, just keep going.
Yeah.
Just
A little more.
keep
Little
going.
more.
Just get to the driveway.
Didn't do
apron.
it.
No, he didn't.
No. All right. Well, we'll go out there later. All right. Thanks for joining me.
That's a we, right?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Well, thanks for having me, buddy.
Hey, you got the official invite.
Yeah, on 351. Most of the time I've been downstairs. Nobody asked me to come up here.
I kind of envisioned myself doing this today and then talking about the trip, and then it felt if you were one floor below us while we were talking
Quite
about that,
literally.
we may as well bring you on
Oh, might as well as an afterthought.
you-
It's fine.
to give your interpretation of the
Not a
trip.
big deal. Whatever, if you want to. It's not a big deal.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, so I think what we're going to do is go over the Packers stuff that we missed last week. And then we're going to hit, I think what we're going to do schedule-wise, because I'm off Thursday, Friday, as we mentioned, I think we're going to go more in-depth into Badgers' high points and the matchup on Thursday at 12:50. What does this program have to do to not get the West Coast draw and have to play early on the West Coast? It's the first game on the West Coast. They have to go to Portland. They get the 5 seed, which, by the way, was predicted right here on this podcast in November before the BYU matchup, or maybe coming out of the BYU matchup after they got blown out. Remember, we talked about we like the makeup of this team. Ultimately, I like the Blackwell-Boyd backcourt, and I think they're getting overlooked like they always do, and they're going to win 20-plus games or whatever we said at that time, mid-20s, and be a 5 or a 6 seed. That all happened. So we've got to celebrate the wins. We definitely have our losses, but we have to celebrate the wins. We nailed that in early November. But this team, this program cannot get a lick of trust from the committee that puts these things together. I don't know what they have against the Badgers, even when they have these randomly good years. And I know if you look at all the locations in the rounds, there was not a real close location like there was a few years ago where they could have played in Milwaukee, but they didn't. There was not, I don't think, a big Midwest city they could have gone to that would have just put them in a really advantageous spot. But to send them to the West Coast again, like they did, was that last year, and then they ended up playing basically a road game against BYU in the second round. And it's going to kind of happen that way. Now, the second round matchup is likely going to be Arkansas if both the Badgers and Arkansas win, and you get the Calipari rematch there, and Acuff, their tremendous guard, against Blackwell and Boyd. So that will be fun if it ends up being that way. So at least you don't have a West Coast team you're going to play, hopefully, in the second round. But I don't know what it is or what this Badger basketball program did to the selection committee. Tell me where Greg Gard hurt you. Tell me on the doll. And honestly, it might be Bo Ryan. I've read some conspiracy theories on Reddit. Let's just talk about the Badgers quick, then we'll do the Packers. Since we're doing this anyway, we're going to do a deep dive on Wednesday, since I'm off Thursday, Friday, into the Badger high point matchup, which is coming up on Thursday. This isn't about that. This is about the Badger program getting absolutely nuts and bolts. We got screwed with location, with seed, with matchup. It is, as my buddy Pat said, tale as old as time. Badgers win 25 games. They get a 5 seed. They end up on the West Coast, and they play a red-hot mid-major, which can score a bunch of points. It kind of reminds me of the James Madison matchup a few years ago with High Point. But we'll talk about that on Wednesday. But I don't know. Is it possible Bo Ryan pissed off the selection committee so much during his rantings and ravings in the final 4 years of 14 and 15? Because remember how outspoken Bo Ryan was at the end of that Duke National Championship game about he was upset about the draw the Badgers had and having to basically play a national title game against Kentucky before they even got to Duke, and Duke had the easier path that year, and the Badgers had been a top 5 team that whole year and had been number 1 a couple of times, so how did we get this bad draw? I don't know if it goes back to that, and that's why the selection committee seems to put the Badgers in tough spots when it comes to location and matchup and having to travel. Maybe it does. I've seen, as I said on Twitter, on Reddit, some people are hypothesizing that is the reason this happens year in, year out. But what are we talking about? That happened 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago. because he retired at the beginning of 16, right? And Gard took over in December of 2016. Is Greg Gard doing something that's making them mad? Is Chris McIntosh doing something that's making them mad? I don't know. I have no explanation for how the Badgers seem to end up in this spot every year, but they're there again. They are on the West Coast taking on a 30-win mid-major team. I feel like, and again, we'll talk about this on Wednesday, I feel like they'll be okay. I think they played a really good Big Ten tournament, obviously. You got the great win against Illinois in overtime. It looked like Austin Rapp was going to resurrect them when things were down against Michigan in the semifinal matchup. That's the semifinals, right, on Saturday? Yeah. And he just started knocking down 3 after 3 after 3 and got them back in that game, and then they end up losing on a last-second 3. But whatever, you lose to the number 3 team in the country, a team that you beat on the road earlier this year, and you lose at the last second by 3 points. They played a great Big Ten tournament. They played great down the stretch. I don't understand how they end up in these situations, and it just feels like it's got to be. It has to be something that Bo Ryan did back in the day. I can't imagine Greg Gard is doing anything on a national level that would upset the selection committee, but how does this keep happening? It can't be an accident, right? This is not a coincidence that this keeps on happening. Well, the Badgers do end up with that 5 seed. They will take on High Point, and yes, it is the first game at that venue, so it'll be 10:50 a.m. locally where they are, 12:50 Central Time for us. But that is a 10:50 a.m. tip time between the Badgers and High Point coming up on Wednesday. But because we're already deep into this, we will save some Badger High Point conversation for Wednesday because we're going to have a podcast on Wednesday as I'm off Thursday, Friday, and we'll preview that matchup on Wednesday. But as the selections were coming down and they got to the West Coast, I thought, here we go. And sure enough, let me just make sure it is 12:50. Thursday, the 19th, first game of the day, TCU, Ohio State, Troy, Nebraska, South Florida, Louisville. Yeah, High Point and Wisconsin West region. Even going back to 2000, even going back to the Dick Bennett Final Four run in 2000, I'm almost certain that was a West Coast region. I don't know how they always end up in the West region. It is annoying. It defies logic how they always end up out there. And always against a red-hot mid-major, wearing purple, just like James Madison, a team that averages 90 points a game, just like James Madison a couple of years ago. Let's hope for a different result. That was a 5-12 too, though, wasn't it? Was that not a 5-12 matchup? I think it was. Now, that one was in Milwaukee, I'm pretty sure. Was it not in Milwaukee? I'll have to go back and look. As Gard has had some high-seeded teams that have ended up in better regions, but it just always feels like more often than not, they get the West Coast draw, they get a bad start time. The only thing that we can be happy about as Badger fans is that they didn't win that Michigan game, as much fun as that would have been. But then you get to the Big Ten championship game, and I'm sure they still would have ended up on the West Coast playing Thursday, playing early. So at least we can be thankful was that last year where they played on Sunday for the Big Ten championship, lost that game, and then had to play in the early window on Thursday. They did not get the benefit of the doubt of getting a Friday tip time after that. So at least we can be thankful. The one good thing about losing to Michigan is that you have that day off then. You're not the last team playing before the selection show, and then you're playing right away in the first window or the second window on Thursday. That's the one blessing about the loss to Michigan on Saturday. At least you had off on Sunday. But we'll talk more about the actual High Point Wisconsin matchup. We'll talk a lot more just about tournament stuff on Wednesday. Now, typically, I would play you the March Madness theme, but again, with some of our travel disruptions and all that kind of stuff, I don't have access to the normal stuff. As you know, over the years, if we do a home podcast, which we're doing right now, I just don't have access to the clips and the things like that I can dual record into the podcast. So we'll have all of that coming up on Wednesday. We'll do a much bigger March Madness podcast on Wednesday. But the Badgers do get the 5 seed. They do end their year, 24-10, I guess, after the loss to Michigan. So 24-9 going into that. And Greg Gard had him 14-6 in Big Ten Conference play. A loaded Big Ten Conference, was one spot away from getting the triple bye. I think I'd been calling it the double bye. I forgot that with 18 teams now in the Big Ten, 18 teams in the Big Ten. I forgot now, it's not just a single double bye situation. It is a single double triple bye situation. So they were a spot away from the triple bye and finishing in the top 4 in the Big Ten Conference in a year where, again, nobody expected anything from them. That's the other disconcerting part about how they end up in these bad situations, region and seed-wise. Wouldn't you think the committee, as fans of college basketball, when a team that has no expectations, which again, I think the Badgers were picked to finish middle of the pack in the Big Ten at best before the year began, and then you get this great run. They're a top 25 team, a team that had very few expectations coming into the year. They overachieve. They're a win away from a triple bye in the Big Ten tournament. Wouldn't you think that would be a nice story, a fun story? You'd want to put them in a better situation. But it almost seems to irritate the selection committee more. I can't put my finger on why that is. But Badgers and High Point coming up on Thursday. That will be a 10:50 or a 12:50 Central Time start time, 10:50 start time for them as the first game in that window out in Portland. Now, let's talk about the Packer moves that all got underway last week. As I said on the last podcast, we did the Friday, what would that have been? Friday, March 8th? I have not worked a day in forever. March 6th. So the last podcast we did was Wednesday, March 4th, right? Because we had St. Jude Thursday, Friday. So as I said then, what a time to take time off when you get things cranked up in the NFL. When, as I said on that Wednesday on the 4th, there is an undeniable uptick in downloads on any Wisconsin sports podcast when you have big Packer moves. Anytime we get to July, August, the beginning of the NFL season, we always see about a 15% boost in downloads because there are Wisconsin sports fans that are just not that interested in the Bucks or Brewers, I guess, to listen to a bi-weekly podcast. The Badgers, all that stuff, they care mostly about the Packers. So we always see an uptick in downloads as we get close to the NFL. And in one of the biggest NFL weeks where free agents are moving and trades are happening, we took off for a week. We headed down to Arizona for a week. But there were a lot of moves, so let's see if we can kind of pinpoint all of them here. The first big move for the Packers was Zaire Franklin, the trade to acquire linebacker Zaire Franklin, which was the first step in basically admitting they were not going to offer Quay Walker a contract extension. If you go back to, it must have been spring of last year, Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker were each entering the second to last year of their deal. So the question is, were you going to give them contract extensions to keep them beyond what would end up being the final year of their deal last year? And they gave Devontae Wyatt a contract extension. Not a big one. Was it a 2-year, I think? And then the question after that was posed to Goody was, are you going to try to do the same thing with Quay Walker, who has had his troubles, but has also been a pretty productive player for this team? Does he live up to the first-round billing? It's kind of like A.J. Hawk. Remember that conversation we always had with A.J. Hawk? Really good, durable, put up decent numbers, but is he worth the 5th overall pick? Well, if he was a 4th, that was always the A.J. Hawk. If he would have been a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick, he would have been one of the greatest 4th or 5th round picks of all time. But because he was the 5th overall pick and he didn't have the game-changing impact that we hoped he would have, maybe he didn't live up to that draft status. I kind of feel similar about Quay Walker, where he put up some big tackle numbers. There were certain games like A.J. Hawk where he'd have a sack or a sack and a half or force a fumble or come up with a game-changing play. It just didn't happen consistently enough. But yeah, if Quay Walker were a 3rd-round pick, I think we all would have said, wow, that was a really good find in the 3rd round, in the 4th round, maybe even the 2nd round. But because he was a 1st-round pick, a day 1 pick, I'm not sure he quite lived up to that. But I did feel like when they signed Wyatt to the extension, who was a 1st-round pick that same year, they got them both in the 1st round, first Walker, then Wyatt. I kind of thought, yeah, they're probably going to find a way to keep Quay Walker around. What I have since learned after last week, and some of the comments Quay Walker made at the end of this year during his exit media interview, and then the comments he made after he signed his deal with the Raiders, it does not seem like Quay Walker felt like that he was used in the best way in Green Bay. And I just feel like there was not dissension, that's probably overstating it, but it just doesn't feel like Quay Walker and the Packer franchise were ever on the same page with the way that he wanted to get used. It does not sound like he wanted to be the Mike linebacker, the guy who has the headset in, who's calling the plays. I feel like he probably wanted to be a little more free and to play a bit more of a freelance position. And they just didn't have that for him. They didn't want him to do that for whatever reason. So they were never on the same page philosophically, I feel like, with what they wanted Quay Walker to be. What Quay Walker wanted Quay Walker to be, like Jimmy and Seinfeld. Don't touch Jimmy. Not that Quay would be talking in the 3rd person. But it just doesn't feel like they were on the same page there. So the fact that they traded for Zaire Franklin was definitely a flag that, yeah, we're probably not bringing Quay Walker back. Now, Zaire Franklin was not great last year in Indy, but 2 years ago in 2024 was a 2nd-team All-Pro, was a Pro Bowler, and led the NFL in tackles. The Colts changed their defensive coordinator from that year, 24, to last year, and it just doesn't sound like Zaire Franklin fit in with what they were doing last year. He is 30 years old. Now, one thing I will say about the guys the Packers have acquired, I don't think it's a coincidence. Speaking of non-coincidences, we really could use the X-Files theme here. But Zaire Franklin is just short of 30, I think. Benjamin St-Juste, the corner they got, is 28 years old. Hargrave is 33 years old, defensive lineman we'll talk about here in a second that they signed off of the Vikings. There has been the conversation among Packer fans. It has been a question posed to Goody the last 2 years that this team now has made the playoffs all 3 years of the Jordan Love era, and they are out in the second round year one, out in the first round the last couple of years. And it does kind of feel like we talked about with Matt LaFleur, and maybe this is a LaFleur thing, maybe it is a young roster thing. That's kind of a debate among Packer fans about these close games against good teams where it seems like they can't make the little stuff happen, where they have a penalty here or there or a turnover. Is this a problem of too much youth on this team? And I know we talked about it heading into last year that, yes, they're young, but they have some experience. They're third, fourth-year players now, have been in the playoffs a couple of times. They're in their mid to late 20s or getting to their late 20s, so they had some experience, it felt like, going into last year. But that's been a debate among Packer fans the last couple of years of, is this a Matt LaFleur problem that they can't get some of these small things tightened up, or is this a problem with having a really young roster and a lot of guys that are just out of college and don't have the 100 NFL game experience or haven't been in the league for 4 or 5 years? What is the balance there? Is this a Matt LaFleur problem, or is this a Goody roster problem where he's way too focused on having a young team? And when you have young teams, they're going to make young mistakes. So if you look at some of the moves they made, Benjamin St-Juste is 28 years old. He's a 5-year veteran. Zaire Franklin is pushing 30 years old. He is a 6-year veteran. Hargrave is an 11-year veteran. He is 33 years old. I don't think that's a coincidence that after 3 years of having the youngest or close to the youngest team in the league and having seasons where it felt like in good games or big games against close teams, it does not feel like they did the small stuff to win those games. Maybe that is a reassessment of Goody looking around at a bunch of kids in the locker room and saying, we might need some adults in the room. We might need a few people who have been in big playoff games, who have won big playoff games, who know what it takes to be really precise in those games and not make the small mistakes that cost you those types of games, those one-possession games, those field goal games in the playoffs. I don't think that's a coincidence that you're seeing a lot of guys, late 20s, early 30s, coming in so far during this cycle of free agency and trades and all this pre-draft stuff. But Zaire Franklin played under Jonathan Gannon, or with Jonathan Gannon, the new Packer defensive coordinator. He was an assistant, I think, to the special teams, or to the defensive coordinator in Indy. So Gannon is very familiar with Franklin, and when they brought him in, even though he had a down year last year, when you bring in a 2024 All-Pro, a guy who led the NFL in tackles in 2024, that pretty much signaled, okay, we're done with Quay Walker. Now, they do bring in Benjamin St-Juste, and he is going to join that trio now. They gave up on Nate Hobbs. It was a really bad signing last year. It just didn't work out at all. Injured, and when he was healthy, didn't really seem to fit in the scheme. Where did he end up? I think he ended up in San Francisco. But they signed Benjamin St-Juste. He's got some experience, and now he joins the Keyshawn Nixon, who I guess is going to be the de facto number one corner heading into next year. And Carrington Valentine, he joins them as that Nate Hobbs role. We'll see if that works out better. But those were two early moves. Packers do retain Sean Ryan on that offensive line. What, a 3-year, $33 million deal. I think he was fine as the center after Elton Jenkins got hurt. They do see Elton Jenkins go away. We kind of talked about that heading into last year when it felt like there was an unofficial contract dispute between Elton Jenkins and the Packers as they were trying to get him to shift to center. Remember, he didn't report, or he didn't do the OTAs. And then I think he did report in July, but it felt like he was angling for more money. Remember, we had that whole conversation last summer about, if you're going to ask me to move to a different position to facilitate the signing of Aaron Banks and all the other moves you want to make, I could use some extra money. They never landed on anything there. And then he was really not that great at center, even by his own admission, and then he got hurt, so they move on from him. Sean Ryan took his spot when he got hurt. He was good enough. He's young. He's big. So they sign him to the contract extension. They do rework the Aaron Banks contract. I kind of thought Aaron Banks might be like Nate Hobbs. I thought they were going to cut bait on their two big free agent acquisitions from last year in the same manner. They do end up cutting Nate Hobbs, but they hang on to Aaron Banks. And Rasheed Walker moves on. He signs in Carolina. He had next to no interest in the league, which I was kind of surprised about. I thought he was okay. he had some really solid games, but for a 7th-round pick to turn into, what, a 2-year or 3-year starter at left tackle, that's pretty impressive. But he gets a 1-year deal in Carolina. There was no appetite in the league for signing Rasheed Walker. So they're going to move Morgan over there. Ryan stays at center. Banks with the rework contract is your left guard. Right guard, I think, is going to be Belton, and then you hope Zach Tom comes back healthy as the right tackle and probably the best offensive lineman that you have. But they've got to get that figured out. We discussed that a podcast or two ago in terms of the Bears and what they did to rework their offensive line heading into last year and how that was a big part of the Bears winning the NFC North and beating the Packers a couple of times down the stretch. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but the Bear offensive line play was way better than the Packers was last year. The moves the Packers made last year of shifting Jenkins to center. Banks was not great. Hopefully he's better this year with that rework contract. Jenkins wasn't great. Walker was really inconsistent. You had issues at right guard until you solidified that by moving Belton to right guard, and Tom was hurt. So not all of that was on Goody. Injuries played a role, but they've got to figure out a way to find some stability there, and I do think signing Sean Ryan to that 3-year, $33 million contract was a good move. They also bring back Darian Kennard, probably best known in that Bears wildcard game as the guy who ended up with the football, what was that, late third quarter, early fourth quarter, when things were kind of going tits up in that game, and he ended up with that pass from Jordan Love, and he was rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, and he lost the football out of bounds. Luckily, they didn't turn it over. But I do think he gives you good depth at each tackle position, and it was a 1-year, $3 million deal or $4 million deal. Super affordable for a guy who's now been in the system. He was here last year. I like them bringing him back, too. But a couple of the big moves were Zaire Franklin and Benjamin St. Juste. Then you go out and you get your defensive lineman that hopefully will make up for losing Colby Wooden in the Rashawn Gary deal. We'll talk more about the Rashawn Gary deal in a second, but they bring in Hargrave. Now, hold on here. I had this loaded up. Javon Hargrave. He has been a very productive NFL player, 2-time Pro Bowler. He has spent time with a lot of different teams. He was in Philly for a while where he had some of his best years, and his defensive coordinator in Philadelphia, Jonathan Gannon. So again, getting a guy that Gannon is familiar with. They signed him to a 2-year deal. I'll play this for you on Friday because, again, I can't do the thing where I record audio from a computer source and record my voice at the same time. But they had a video up, the Packers social media team had a video up of Javon Hargrave's kid, who looks like he's maybe 11 years old, reacting to his mom videotaping him and reacting to the fact that Hargrave got signed in Green Bay, and he is so jacked up. We'll play that video for you on Wednesday for the podcast when I can kind of get back in the studio and do that kind of stuff. But Hargrave has been a very successful defensive lineman across his 11 years in the NFL. And now you pair him with Wyatt. Again, you traded Colby Wooden, who was an up-and-coming tackle. You traded him as a part of the Rashawn Gary deal, so you needed somebody there. And again, you get a guy with a lot of experience, a 2-time Pro Bowler. He had been in Minnesota, so familiar with the NFC North. He has kind of bounced around. I guess I'd say that's the one thing. I wouldn't call it irksome. That's probably putting too much on it. But it is always interesting to me when you sign a guy like Javon Hargrave, and everybody says, oh my God, what a great signing. He's productive everywhere he goes, 2-time Pro Bowler. What a great player to have. But you look at his career and think, if he's that good, why is he on so many teams? He was in San Francisco for a while. He was in Minnesota for a while. He was in Philly for a while. That's the one thing that I would call maybe a little bit of a head scratcher, but it's hard to dispute the numbers. And if you go by PFF, if you put any stock into Pro Football Focus, if you put grades on run defending tackles, he was better than any tackle against the run that the Packers had last year on their roster. So you add that in Javon Hargrave on a 2-year, $22 million deal. Now let's talk about the Rashawn Gary thing. This was so weird. We were doing the St. Jude Radiothon, so we didn't have a chance to talk about it on the Thursday or Friday that it happened. But Rashawn Gary, he put out on his Instagram, he put out a post thanking Packer fans. Now, look, I think we all felt like the Rashawn Gary era had ended in Green Bay. He had 7.5 sacks last year. He was really good at the beginning of the year, and we all kind of thought that he would thrive once they got Micah Parsons. Not only did we think Micah would have a good year, but the fact that Micah Parsons occupies so much attention, you really felt like Rashawn Gary. How old is Rashawn? He is still not 30, is he? He's 28 years old. So Rashawn Gary heading into last year, in 24, he was a Pro Bowler, in quotes, 7.5 sacks, had 9 sacks the year prior. His best season in Green Bay was 21, where it looked like in 21, and I know we've talked about this, but in 21, on that defense against the Niners in the divisional round game. He was so good in that game. He was in the prime of his career, a half sack short of a double-digit sack year that year. I'm not saying it looked like he was going to be Micah Parsons, but it looked like at that point before he tore the ACL in 22, it looked like he was going to be a game-wrecking edge rusher, a Pro Bowl caliber edge rusher for many years to come. Then the knee injury in 22, and 23, he had 9 sacks. That was a good year. 24 again, Pro Bowl year with 47 tackles and 7.5 sacks. But it felt like, okay, 28 years old, you bring in another edge rusher like Micah, now Rashawn's not going to see double teams. He'll have a great year. And he did have a great first 7 or 8 weeks, where all of his sacks came in that first 7 or 8 weeks, 7.5 sacks. And then it just seemed like, I don't know if the conditioning was poor. We don't know the facts on that. It would look that way, though, based on the way he was trying to chase Caleb Williams around in those 2 Bears games, the one in the regular season, the one in the wild card matchup. It looked like he just flat out ran out of gas many times at the end of last year. And it also kind of felt like Micah Parsons, when he was cleaning out his locker and talking about next year and what the expectation is and what his expectation is of teammates around him heading into next year when he gets healthy, he very pointedly pointed out the conditioning, the hustle, the effort. Those felt like not so subtle shots at what we saw from Rashawn Gary at the end of the year, especially after Micah Parsons had gone down. I'm not saying there was a bad relationship there. I'm not saying there was animosity between those 2 guys. But when we saw what we saw, our eyes saw it. We saw the effort, and we saw Rashawn Gary basically give up on plays. Now, look, in Rashawn Gary's defense, Caleb Williams is an elite athlete. And Rashawn Gary might say, in the open field, I'm never going to catch Caleb Williams. But you can't make it look like he gave up. You have to try. Even if this is the cheetah versus the gazelle, even if there's no chance the gazelle is going to outrun the cheetah, you have to give it some effort. I mean, you have to make it look like you're giving it the old college try. And so many times in those 2 games, especially in the wild card game, it just looked like once it got into open space, Rashawn Gary admitted defeat and said, I'm not going to catch this guy. I'm not going to waste my energy trying to catch this guy. And the fact that Micah Parsons very specifically talked about conditioning, hustle, all that stuff, that did feel like a not-so-subtle shot across Rashawn Gary's bow. And even before those comments, it felt like we had come to an end of the Rashawn Gary era in Green Bay. But he puts that goodbye message out on Instagram, and I think, okay, there it is. We kind of were waiting for this. They're going to cut him. They're going to move on from Rashawn Gary. And then an hour later, or less than an hour later, he takes the goodbye and the thank you to Green Bay fans down, which, by the way, he signed Rashawn Bane Gary. I don't know if that's him referring to his own nickname for himself. I don't recall him ever being called Bane, like Batman Bane. I don't recall that ever being a conversation. And we're pretty locked into social media here, and we watch all the games. So maybe that's something he calls himself. Or is Bane his actual middle name? There's no way, right? But he put that goodbye message out. Less than an hour later, he pulls it down. So NFL Twitter, Ian Rapoport and Adam Schefter, they all said, oh, here's the Rashawn Gary goodbye. 30 minutes later, well, he's taking it down. And then the report comes out that Rashawn Gary was hacked. I was hacked. And it just seems implausible that if you were to hack an account like that, instead of trying to use it to make money or to sell something or whatever, that you would use it to create a really heartfelt goodbye with a graphic. That's what the hacker decided to do once he got in control of your account. That was the least believable hacking of all time. So they pull the goodbye down, and it became clear a day later why that was, because the Packers didn't want the message out there that they were going to cut him. They wanted to get something for him if they could. Let's try to trade him instead of just outright putting him out on the lawn. What the Packers wanted to avoid was putting Rashawn Gary out on the curb like an old couch. You ever see that in your neighborhood? You're driving around, somebody bought a new couch, they don't know what to do with the old one, they put it on the curb. Maybe somebody will take it, right? Maybe somebody will just take this couch off of our hands and we don't have to worry about disposing of it. That's what the Packers were trying to avoid doing. They were trying to find a trade partner, somebody that would give them something, somebody that would buy the couch for $50 or for pennies on the dollar. And they did find somebody to do that. Jerry Jones wanted to do that. So the Packers end up sending Rashawn Gary and was it Colby Wooden? I think it was. Or did they trade Colby Wooden for Zaire Franklin? That's what the trade was. It was Wooden for Franklin straight up. So that was not a part of that deal. But they did trade away Colby Wooden, and that's what makes the Hargrave signing so big. Wooden was not a part of that. But they do send Rashawn Gary and a pick, I think, to Dallas, and they got back a 4th-round pick. I mean, that's not bad. I would have thought
At the end of last year, with the way Rashawn Gary looked, I thought the most likely outcome was that he would be the Barca-lounger on the curb. And I thought if they were to get anything for Rashawn Gary, the likelihood is they would get a 6th-round pick at best, probably a conditional 7th-round pick. So the fact that they gave up a pick along with Gary, but the fact that they got a 4th-round pick, I think, is pretty damn good and not that bad a move from Goody. Look, it's obviously a sell-low situation. You spent a 1st-round pick, a near top 10 pick on Rashawn Gary, and he had productive years. So getting a 4th-rounder back for him and having to give up something in that trade as well isn't ideal. Like, it's not the Malik Willis situation where you end up trading a 7th-rounder, you get Malik Willis, and then they're going to get a compensatory, I think, 3rd-round pick for Malik. That's a big upgrade. But the fact that they got anything for him, given the way he looked at the end of last year, I thought was pretty good to receive that. So Rashawn Gary ends his Green Bay career, plays 106 games and registers 46.5 sacks. And yeah, 2021 was his best year. He was so good in that playoff game. He had 9.5 sacks that year. He had a couple of forced fumbles, a fumble recovery that year. But then after the knee injury in 2022, even though he had a 9-sack year in 23 and was a Pro Bowler in 24, it just never seemed like he got back that athleticism, that strength that he had from the 2021 season. So they do get something back for Rashawn Gary in the Cowboy trade. Now, the other moves, where did I go now? Did I lose this? Oh, here we go. Romeo Doubs, gone, kind of expected. I do think they're going to miss him, and I'm going to miss him, and they are going to rely on Christian Watson now entering the final year of his deal, that 1-year deal they signed him to that extended him beyond this past year. And hopefully he stays healthy, and he looked great. And if he is healthy and puts numbers up next year, he's going to be given a big contract, either from Green Bay or from somebody else if he has big numbers next year. But now you're kind of relying on Matthew Golden to ascend, and he looked great in that wild card game. And it does kind of seem like Brian Gutekunst in his postseason presser was hoping for more opportunities for Golden this year than what Matt LaFleur and the offense gave him. But now you're relying on Matthew Golden to step up and take that Romeo Doubs role. You're relying on Golden, Jaden Reed, and Christian Watson to kind of lead the way. Romeo Doubs ends up with a solid Green Bay career. There was obviously the weirdness of leaving the team, the don't show, don't call. They had to do a wellness check on him. He's suspended for a game in L.A. That was weird. He had one of my favorite quotes of all time last year, talking about Tucker Kraft and the torn ACL, that he's in a better place. But he was a fairly productive player. Let me pull up Romeo Doubs' stats here. He was fine. He was never going to be a guy, and I guess we'll see what he does in New England now with Drake May. And the Patriots moved on from Stephon Diggs, so there will be opportunity there for Romeo Doubs, and he's only 25 years old. But he ends up, after 4 years in Green Bay, he had 202 catches for 2,424 yards and 21 touchdowns. Not bad. But you look across the years. His rookie year, 42 catches, 425. In 23, 59 catches, 674. In 24, 46 catches, 601. Last year, 55 catches, 724. Had 6 touchdowns. His best touchdown year was 23. He had 8 that year. He did seem like a good safety valve, though, for Jordan Love. It seemed like Love did trust him in those situations. Made some big plays in some big games. Again, though, a lot like with Quay Walker and some of the guys we talked about, just not consistent enough. He's still, as I just said, 25 years old, very young. He is heading to a good offensive system with an all-pro level young quarterback. Maybe he will have an 80-catch, 1,200-yard year. I'm not sure I would bet on that, and I don't think the Packers would bet on that either based on the fact that they did not give him that contract. But he signs a 3-year, $70 million deal in New England. I thought he was mostly good. He was above average to good to pretty good for most of his 4 years in Green Bay. We'll see what he does in New England. But you spent the first-round pick on Golden last year, so somebody was going to go there. I mean, somebody was going to move on, and Golden is going to get more opportunities in year 2. He has to. So you do move on from Romeo Doubs. Malik Willis, as expected, kind of predicted here, right? Didn't we talk about Miami? He follows Jeff Hatley to Miami. He signs a 3-year, was it a $65 million deal? So just shorter, just better than $20 million a year. I think we predicted between 10 and 15, right? And he's going to get his shot there. They're pretty much done with Tua. I don't think have they officially cut Tua? I don't know if they have. I've been in Arizona. Is Tua still in Miami? I think he is not. Did they cut him? Oh, they released him. Oh, only a couple of days ago. So he is going to go to Atlanta on a 1-year deal, join the Falcons on a 1-year deal. So Malik is going to get every opportunity there. And like I said at the end of the year, for a Jordan Love defender, for somebody who has been in the Jordan Love coal mines the way that I have, defending Jordan Love at every pass, defending every errant pass, and there haven't been many, but defending every bad decision. And then Malik would come in and perform really well, and then the conversation got louder about, they should have kept Malik and moved on from Jordan. So I am rooting for Malik to have a great career in Miami. If he puts up the kind of numbers he put up as a backup in Green Bay, that conversation is going to be very loud. If the Packers continue to sputter early in playoff games and the Jordan Love era kind of goes in that direction and Malik does put up those kind of numbers in Miami that he put up as a backup, I don't think they're going to be that good of numbers. How could they be over a 16, 17 game sample? But if that happens, that is my worst nightmare. As an on-air person, as a podcaster who has defended Jordan Love, that would be my worst case scenario. But I am rooting for Malik, and I do think it'll be fun to watch him win that starting job. And then what can he do? That's been the question, right? He's looked really good as a backup when he's had to come in games. When they've had to have him start a few games, he's looked really good. But the thing I always brought up, and a lot of Packer podcasters and bloggers and reporters have brought up, is how does this look when he's the guy, when he's the 16, 17 game a year starter, when teams can game plan for him and not have him drop it in the middle of the game? That is one thing I think Malik thrived on in Green Bay, is he did add that running element that Jordan Love just doesn't have. So when he would parachute into games, teams were not ready for that, and he thrived on that. He feasted on that. Now, in the games he started, he still looked really good, and teams had time to prep for him for those games, and he still was successful. But I have always been curious over the last 2 years, I think a lot of Packer fans have, how does this look over a 16-game schedule, 17-game schedule, when he's the guy and he has to do it week in, week out? We're going to find out. So Malik goes to Miami, Romeo goes to New England, Quay goes to the Raiders. Kingsley Enagbare was a weird one to me. I thought they'd bring him back because that signing he made with the Jets, a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Jets. And after they traded Gary, it felt to me like a certainty that Enagbare would be back. So you're probably looking for an edge rusher when you get to the draft. Nate Hobbs didn't work out. He goes to San Francisco. Colby Wooden goes to Indy as a part of the Zaire Franklin deal. Rashawn goes to Dallas, and Elton Jenkins is cut and ends up in Cleveland. I think we got most of that in there, but I think the number one thing that I picked up from last week is it is not without purpose that Goody is bringing in some guys with a resume, guys that are in their late 20s, early 30s. You know, he had that big statement heading into last year of it is time for us to compete for championships. And then he goes and makes the splash moves. He brings in Micah Parsons, and that's the biggest move made preseason in the NFL last year. And it works out until Micah gets hurt. And when Micah got hurt, they were 9-3-1 with a lead in Denver, and it looked like they might be able to compete for a 1 seed. And then things unraveled after that. But he said before last year, it is time to get serious about competing for championships. He makes the move for the veteran edge rusher, who's still young in Micah, and then the year goes the way it goes, and clearly at this point, the Packers feel like without all the injuries, they would have been a 1 or a 2 seed. They would have been competing for a Super Bowl, because you don't keep everything the same, or as many things the same as they did, if you don't feel that way. They're keeping as much consistent as they can. They had no control over Jeff Hatley leaving. I guess they had no control over Rich Bisaccia leaving with the way that all went. So they had to change some things up there. But for the most part, we kind of thought at the end of the year last year with the way it ended, is Matt LaFleur's job in jeopardy? Is Brian Gutekunst's job in jeopardy? Are those seats getting hot? And the fact that both got contract extensions, Ball got a contract extension, they're kind of keeping things as is, as many things as they can. It feels like they feel like without the injuries last year, they're a 1 or a 2 seed in the NFC, and they're competing for a championship, and they're going to try to run this thing back for the most part and see what happens, see if they can get better fortune as it relates to injuries. But they feel like they need to add some veteran depth, and they did that last week with Zaire Franklin, Benjamin St-Juste, and Javon Hargrave. All right, now let's talk about, real quick, let's just talk about the Baseball Classic. I guess we'll end on the Bucks. We're kind of all over the place here, but World Baseball Classic kind of hooked me. And I was watching last night again as they took on the Dominican Republic in the semifinal matchup. Remember when it started, I said, I don't know how much interest I have in this. It's never kind of gotten me hooked. Well, this year it kind of has. I've been into it. And a part of that was the manager of Team USA, Mark DeRosa, former pretty good utility player in Major League Baseball. I think he was an all-star a couple of years. And he's been an MLB Network analyst since then. He gets the job as the manager for Team USA. And yeah, he doesn't have a lot of managing experience, clearly, but that's who is taking the job. And then the controversy with the pool play matchup against Italy is what really got people talking about the World Baseball Classic. They always say in media, in radio, any publicity is good publicity. And heading into the matchup in pool play Team USA had with Italy, Mark DeRosa was doing the TV rounds, and he thought that before that game, they had already punched their ticket to the quarterfinal round. Like they had already moved on past pool play. He literally says specifically that in the pregame ramp up to the matchup with Italy. Hey, we've already moved on. We're already in the quarterfinal round, but we want to take this game as seriously as possible, and we want to win this game. Well, what he didn't realize is that they needed to win that game still, that there was a very real chance if they lost that game, they would not advance out of pool play. And they get to that matchup with Italy, and he trots out a B lineup. Now, look, it's a loaded roster, so a B lineup is still a pretty good lineup. But he trots out a very B lineup. And then he also said heading into that game that the guys were out partying after they won the previous game, and I guess they all felt like they had advanced. They went out and gave her and had a night. And he said before the game against Italy, we're resting some guys. His quote was, some guys are dragging today because they were out all night the night prior. So you go on TV and say we've already advanced. You put your B lineup out there while admitting that the team was out partying after their last win and they all thought they had advanced. And then they get down to Italy 7 or 8-0 in a blink. And then all of a sudden, the conversation on social media is, this team is not necessarily safe. If they lose this game, it comes down to runs allowed or run differential. The tiebreakers are weird, but they have a very real chance of not getting out of pool play and having this be a catastrophe for Team USA baseball. A catastrophe. And they lose that game. They get smoked. I mean, they kind of came back late, but they get smoked. And then it ends up with Italy versus Mexico 2 days later, the last matchup of pool play. And if Mexico would have won that game, the U.S. would not have made it to the quarterfinal round. I am shocked that Mexico and Italy did not have some kind of handshake agreement because the U.S. is the most talented roster. Look, the Dominican team they beat last night, which we'll talk about in a second, loaded roster with Albert Pujols. The Venezuelan team that plays tonight, really good. The Italy roster, which I wouldn't have looked at and been blown away by, they've just played really well. So there are some talented teams, but the U.S., by far, has the most talented team in the World Baseball Classic. Bryce Terang's been playing his ass off, was not good last night, but beyond that has been really good for Team USA. So if you're Italy and Mexico, and you know if the Mexican team wins, the most talented team that is in the World Baseball Classic is eliminated, I thought for sure the Italians, bippity-boppity, would roll out their own B lineup and let Mexico beat them. And if Mexico wins that game, they both move on. Both teams are already in. And you keep the most talented team in the World Baseball Classic on the sideline. I was stunned there was no handshake agreement there. So it ends up where Italy beats Mexico, and the U.S. gets to get into the quarterfinal round by the skin of their teeth. But that whole Mark DeRosa subplot got everybody on social media, on sports social media, baseball social media, all the major, everybody was talking about it. So again, any publicity is good publicity, kind of. This is the most invested I've ever been in a Team USA World Baseball Classic storyline. So it ends up that they do get into the round, or to the bracket, to out of pool play. They played the Dominican Republic last night. Dominican Republic has a ton of talent on that team. Juan Soto on that team, just a ton of really good guys. And you end up in a very close matchup. Abner Uribe pitching for the Dominican Republic last night was tremendous. He mowed down the middle of the U.S. order, 1, 2, 3 on 7 pitches. He looked electric, which is great for the Brewers. And you get into a 2-1 game. The Dominicans, Jerry? The Dominicans. They end up in a 2-1 game. Bottom of the 9th inning, Mason Miller is on to close the game out for Team USA, but he allows a base runner, and with 2 outs, that base runner is on third base. So you are a wild pitch away from a tie game and going to extras. And it ends up where Mason Miller strikes out the last batter for the Dominican Republic. The pitch was, it was 2 feet low. On the pitch tracker on TV, I couldn't believe they called it a strike, nor could the Dominican bench, and they went crazy. if the ABS review system would have been in play last night, there's no chance that's called a strike on review. And it was a 3-2 count, so that would have walked that guy, and you would have had runners on the corners then with 2 down and clinging to a 2-1 lead. But they called a strike, and the U.S. moves on with that 2-1 win. But a horrible call. Great for us. I mean, we're rooting for Team USA, okay? Just make sure we have that on record. You never know. You never know in the current climate we have now who's listening to what. So just let me be on record as saying, I am rooting for Team USA. I am an American. I'm rooting for Team USA. Because I am a fan of the Americans, I am happy with the call, but it was a bad call, and it does not stand up to review. So now the Americans await the winner of tonight's Venezuela-Italy matchup, and Italy just feels like a team of destiny right now. But that is tonight, and then the winner of tonight's game takes on the U.S. team on Tuesday for the World Baseball Classic Championship. Americans lost to Japan and Shohei in the championship last year. But that'll be coming up on Tuesday. But yeah, that Mark DeRosa storyline, that kind of got me invested into the whole thing. But that'll be coming up tomorrow. I think that's on Fox at 6 o'clock. Now let's just talk real quickly about the Bucks. This is, as we said in the teaser, this is a worst case scenario. They won that 8 of 10. They got a little bit hot. They kind of got themselves back in the play-in tournament conversation. After winning 8 of 10, they were 1 game out. And since then, they have puked all over themselves. They lost, I think, 6 games in a row. They won yesterday. They beat the Pacers yesterday at Fiserv Forum, 131-114, right? Let me just see here. So they won 8 of 10. They were 26-31. Then they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then they lost 8 of 9. And then they won yesterday. So now they've won 2 of 10. So they won 8 of 10. Then they lost 8 of 10. They win yesterday 134-123. Giannis was great, but he hurt himself again. Now, it sounds like they're not going to do imaging. He went in for a dunk in the second half yesterday. He played how many minutes? 23? In 23 minutes, he had 31 points and 14 rebounds and 8 assists. He was great. But on a dunk in the lane, he hyperextended his leg. I'm telling you, maybe this is a larger conversation, and this podcast has already gone way too long. This is probably a bigger conversation for the offseason. I don't know what they're doing. At this point, again, you may as well lose as many games. Why is Giannis playing? His body is clearly not healthy. Why are we forcing Giannis, or why is Giannis being allowed to, and this is probably what it comes down to, that nobody has control over Giannis in the franchise. And that's been clear for many years. And I guess at the end of the day, because we're never going to have a player like him again. Whenever it is that he's gone, whether he signs the contract extension in October or not, whether he asks for a trade this offseason and they do trade him, whether they don't trade him and he rides out the final year and he leaves after next year, whatever. However this plays out, you're never going to have a player like Giannis again. It is never going to be this way again. So because of that, I guess on some level I feel okay about the fact that you're letting this once-in-a-lifetime player dictate whatever he wants to do. But you have to have some control, because Giannis, as much as I love him, and I love him, he does not have a real-world grasp of where this team is at right now, I don't think. This team is going nowhere. Him being on the floor is only detrimental, because if he plays well, you might win a few games, and that hurts your draft status. And the worst case is something like yesterday, where instead of hyperextending a knee and him feeling okay after the game, maybe he tears an ACL, maybe he blows out an Achilles. There is nothing to gain by Giannis being on the floor right now other than hurting your draft status and potentially him suffering a cataclysmic injury that could cost him the entirety of next year. I don't know why they're allowing this to happen, but again, nobody in the organization has any control over Giannis. He does whatever he wants. And I guess it sounds like yesterday he had to be talked out of coming back in the game after he hyperextended his knee. He went to the locker room. He limped off to the locker room. He limped back to the sideline. Then he tried to get back in the game. What are we doing? This is a 15-win Pacer team. You don't want to beat them anyway. Why is this happening? Why is any of this happening? That's my question. Why is any of this happening? So they get the win you don't want to get. They have no chance of making the play-in tournament. Even if they got in, they have no chance of winning it. Even if you win that, you have no chance of winning in the first round. This team is going nowhere. They've got to rework the whole thing. in the offseason, hopefully around Giannis, but I guess that remains to be determined. I think ultimately he's going to sign the contract extension because at this point, there is a real NBA conversation, I would think, with other teams of, do you want to give Giannis a 5-year contract extension? I think we lightly touched on this a few podcasts ago. He's 31 years old. He plays his ass off every time he's on the floor, but that means he's getting hit. He's falling down. He's twisting his body and his back and torquing his knee and wrenching this and hurting that. So the accumulation of playing 14 years like that in the NBA, it feels like, I don't want to use the term injury prone. I'm not using that. I'm saying it, but I'm not using it. Does that make sense? It feels like he is not responding to or coming back from these little nagging injuries, and they're happening more, and he's not recovering from them as quickly as he used to when it felt like he was Wolverine, and he would just be back out there. He would have the worst-looking injury you've ever seen, like in the playoffs in 21, and he would be back in 10 days, and you'd think, my God, how could his knee bent the wrong way? And he's back out there in a week and a half scoring 40 points in an NBA Finals game. That feels like it's a long time ago. I mean, it's 5 years ago, and it is a long time ago. And now I believe there has to be a question in the NBA. The Bucks are the only team that can sign Giannis to that Supermax in October. A 5-year, I think $200-something million, a 4-year, 210, 4-year, 220. They're the only team that can sign him to that amount of money. But if he played out all of next year, if they don't trade him and he just plays next year and doesn't sign the contract extension, then at 32 years old, after next year, he would, for the first time in his career, be a free agent. He could go anywhere he wanted to. But with this accumulation of injuries and the amount of games he's missed, and now it feels like with this aggressive style of play, every time he goes down, you're kind of holding your breath that something might have happened. I wonder what kind of market there is for other teams that if Giannis were a free agent, who's giving him 4 years, $200 million? You know what I mean? Who is giving him that? 2 years ago, that wouldn't even be a question. Heading into this year, it probably wouldn't have even been a question. Any team in the NBA would have given him that contract. I'm not sure that's the case with the way this year has gone, not only on the floor, but with the injuries. So they win a game that you didn't want them to win. They're 28-39. They are 5 games back of the Hornets for the 10 seed. And yeah, Giannis is dealing with a knee situation coming out of yesterday. Now, he said in the postgame he's not even going to get imaging on it. He feels fine, and the trainers have said he's going to be fine. We'll see if he's out there on Tuesday. They play St. Paddy's Day at home against Cleveland on national TV on NBC. But this year is going about as bad as it could have gone, where you're not the competitive team you thought you would be. Then it looked like you were dead and battling for a top 5 pick. Then you won 8 of 10. Okay, all of a sudden we're trying to win. Then you lose 8 of 10, and Giannis comes back, and now he's had multiple injuries, a groin injury, a calf injury, now a knee injury, and it's going about as poorly as you could want it to go. So it is Bucks and Cavaliers coming up on Tuesday at Fiserv Forum. All right, that'll do it. This is a long one, everybody. We were off since March 4th, and we gave you a lot of content on this podcast. When we come back on Wednesday, we'll discuss a little bit about the Bucks week and the Brewers week, and we will hit much more on March Madness, brackets, and Badgers high point coming up on Thursday from, of course, Portland. Have a happy, safe rest of your work week, and Blizzard 2026 will chat with you then.